Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So, we're gonna jump right back into it where we left off, the colonial era, and Christopher Columbus came back and told everyone about all these treasures and gold and etc. etc. So, first of all, we have to reiterate the concept again of how important the concept that I made up, social newtonianism, is. Social newtonianism at its core is just based off of Newton's third law of motion, which I don't want to give the entire length because it's pretty wordy. But everyday thing is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Put the word social in front of that, and you got a very good case for what I guess you could call factionalism, but it's not exactly like factionalism. When your rival tribe or your rival country has something that you don't have, then your brain starts to desire it. Or not just desire that, but also desire something better than that. I'll give an example. Portugal had a monopoly on the spice trade, early colonial era. They had colonies basically everywhere in the Indian Ocean, and they were making bank. Now, who got the idea of spice trades? Now, you probably don't think of Portugal as a major spice trade player, especially in the late age. This is because the Dutch took everything over and then made them themselves make even more bank. And that is why the Dutch East Indian Company is still the highest worth company at its peak with $8 trillion. The Netherlands, or the Dutch, treated the Portuguese as a rival, and that allowed for the Dutch to succeed. However, that is a little ahead of time, so let's get back to the colonial era. So, now we see that Spain has a new route to a lot of gold and a lot of other stuff. So now every other Western power is going to think to themselves, I got to get in on this. So we see it the most as Spain, of course, because they're the first ones to discover it and invest the most amount of money in it, which they did. France was in an interesting position at the time. As we know, they were very politically unstable even up to this point, and they were looking at France for the majority of the medieval age was considered to be a very authoritarian, religiously instated country. However, this changes during the colonial era and eventually the Napoleonic Wars. However, we're not exactly there just yet. We're gonna get to that though. So the colonial era starts. You have all the powers gobble up land. There's barely any land on the entire 2 continents worth of land left to gobble up. And we see that both the UK and France have their sizable portions. However, Spain is the main taker and winner of this initial race. However, they don't hold on to this. And I'll explain why they don't hold on to this. So, first of all, the majority of their population was made up of former Aztec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations. All of these 3 were very strong empires in Native America. However, all failed to the Spanish Empire. However, these people still have the culture of Spain. And considering how far away it is, it's very hard to govern a piece of land when the best mode of transportation you have at this point is, what would it be? A boat that could that may get taken over by pirates, and it also may get taken over by the waves, and it may get taken over by a bunch of other stuff. So the transportation and communication aspect of it is very bad. So to say that it was hard to govern the Spanish colonies from Spain's point of view would be an understatement. They did do good initially, but that's before the majority of powers realized how good the concept of privateers hired pirates. And when they did that, then that kind of put the golden age of piracy to a very high point and stopped the governmentship of Spain and eventually Portugal. And yeah. So that kind of shows the dynamic there, but that's only one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is that they took a very interesting take into populating the new countries than what the British and French did. So the British and French did the way that we would probably expect of just importing, or not really importing, but moving parts of their population to these colonies so then they can make more babies, and eventually the colonies would be self-sufficient. But that's not what they did, for a couple reasons. First of all, Spain and Portugal, compared to the other powers, were a lot more underpopulated, so they couldn't afford to bring that many people over. So what they did was they brought a sizable portion over, yes. However, not enough to run the amount of land that they did, or at least rule over it. So what they did is they had babies with the locals, and that's why ethnic Mexican people are a mix of Native American and also Spanish. It's because their ancestors were from Spain and also from the land Native America, or wherever they were. And that perspective it shows how weakly oriented that the Spanish were, because they couldn't even afford to have their own people out there. And this is at a time when it was considered pretty taboo to have a relationship with someone not of your race. So now you have a new population of people that were partly made up of Native American, so their heritage is already kind of confusing. And the government that they rule over, it was very far away from where they are. So they're basically autonomous. Naturally, you and your people are going to start to want freedom of some sort, of autonomy of some sort. So, and that is one of the reasons why there was so many colonies and countries that broke away so quickly from Spain during that one very bad part after I forget the name of the ruler, but after the golden age of Spain ended, then you saw the very quick decline of Spain very quickly. Now, going back to France and Britain, we see them do the take that we would have imagined them do. However, they did end up having to move the locals out of the way to make room for the colonists. And this brings up a very important part. So, like I previously talked about, we've seen France and England and Britain both consider themselves rival to a very high degree. Not just from my side's gonna beat your side, or not from a sporting rivalry, but from a legitimate hatred, religiously believed, many other things. There's been countless wars fought between the two. And now they have a pretty long border that they share now in the New World, which previously to them they've never had before, except if you count the holdings that England has, or England did have, way back then. But that wasn't really considered rivalry at that point. So you have a very long border that they have never had in a very long time. And they're rivals. As you can imagine, that's probably going to start a war. So that's why most people consider, and if you know what I'm talking about, this is the 7 Years' War. And this was, in my opinion, the straw that broke the camel's back, or one of the many straws that broke the camel's back for the French nobility. At this point, they were falling behind in terms of progression in Europe. They were still very authoritarian. They still were very religiously believed. And there was barely any progress made. Now, as you may imagine, this upset a lot of people in France, especially now that they have to pay a lot more taxes. So what this means now is that they're very upset, and when a group of people in a country become very upset to this degree and this caliber, then you probably know where this is going. A revolution popped out. And I really wish I could talk about this more, but I can't. I just hit 10 minutes. See you tomorrow, or see you later tonight. I'm not sure. Thank you, and goodbye.